Thank you. Well, good morning and welcome everyone. It really is nice to see all these faces this morning. I'm Mayor Schulman with the Hartford Foundation's Nonprofit Support Program, and I want to welcome you all today to the session on the role of staff care in effective leadership. As we mentioned in the invitation, this is meant to be an interactive session. So there will be a couple of breakout groups, which will allow you to kind of share your ideas and challenges with each other. We are primarily a group of executive directors / CEOs this morning, with only a couple of exceptions. So I think it's kind of a unique space for you to talk with each other. So we ask that to the extent possible, if you can keep your cameras on, that would be great. So special thanks, as always, to my NSP colleagues, Betsy and Monica, for all of their behind the scenes assistance and great teamwork in planning for and managing the logistics for today's session and for all of our sessions. So we will be sharing the handouts and the session recording with all of you following the session. Betsy will be posting the survey for the session in the chat towards the end, and she'll also send you the survey immediately following the session. And we really, really do value your feedback and ask that you fill that out. It's the only price of admission, and we do read every comment and use your suggestions to make improvements for future sessions. So please just take a couple minutes and fill that out. So our facilitators today are Stacy Watson and Alicia Davis of Transformative Leadership Strategies. I think some of you may know them already. And the mission of TLS is to support leaders. Stacy started her career as a counselor, working with individuals and couples. Over time, she transitioned into corporate leadership roles, and she's worked extensively with teams that are quite diverse in terms of function, culture, geography. Alicia has over 30 years of experience in healthcare, insurance, nonprofit, corporate, and engineering settings. And she provides coaching to individuals, executives, teams, and boards. So I will turn the program over to you, Stacy and Alicia.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for taking time to be here this morning. We know how precious your time is, and so we are very honored to have you here this morning. And Mayor, thank you for the introduction and for inviting us to be here. And Stace, you want to just you did such a great job. I don't think we really need to introduce ourselves anymore, right, Stace?
No, that's right. I mean, I think just as you mentioned, Mayor, you know, as an organization, we spend a large percentage of our time working in support of nonprofit organizations. And we, I think, have a real appreciation for how hard some of the work is that you and your staff and your leaders are doing each and every day. And this has been an extraordinarily difficult time for everyone on the planet. And I think nonprofits have felt it in some ways, in some unique ways, in terms of just the amount of impact and still trying to make the difference in the community, right? So it's been an interesting and challenging time.
That's
certainly.
Right. That's right. And our discussion today, and really, as Mayor said, we love being interactive, and we really want you to have the opportunity to connect with each other as much as possible. And so we'd love to start the session just to hear whether it's, you know, raise a hand, like literally if we can see you, if you want to use the reaction buttons, raise your hand down there. If that's easier, you pop to the top of our screen. Feel free, if somebody shares something, also, you're welcome to use a reaction button just to offer a little bit of connection and support if that feels meaningful to you. And we would love to just hear for a couple of minutes, why are you here this morning? So, you know, you could be doing anything. I'm sure you have a gajillion things on your list. And, you know, we would love to know what would make this session really valuable to you. So if there was something that you wanted to take away from today, and you are welcome to type in the chat if that's easier. We'd love to hear a few shares with hand raises. So what would be helpful for you today in terms of a takeaway or something that would be valuable to you? Yes, please,
Yeah,
Denise.
Denise.
I'm filling in as an interim executive director for a very small charity. And so I'm here today to learn. I came out of the corporate world, and that's very different than the charity world. I'm also the board president. So that's why I'm here to learn and trying to understand what is available typically to your staff. We only have 5 people in the organization, and not only from a training and quite frankly, from a benefit standpoint. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Denise.
Thank you, Denise. That's a tough role to be in, coming on as a board president and filling in as an interim. That is a heavy lift. Thank you for doing it. So
It looked
Cora,
like
dealing
Anne,
with pandemic tiredness. Absolutely, Cora. We will talk about what we unfortunately like to say, COVID fatigue, right? COVID fatigue is a real thing. Yes,
Alicia,
go
I
ahead,
think
Stacey.
Anne had raised her hand.
She did.
And then, so I just wanted to make sure she had space to share her
Yeah.
feedback.
Good morning to everyone. I wanted to respond, but to the earlier part of your question, which really was around why am I here this morning? And it's because, staff care and wellness has not always been as high a priority as it is today. And as leaders, we need to really be in tune with how we can support our staff, the staff that we do have during this difficult time, and how we support ourselves to do that. So that's why I'm here.
Yes.
Thank you, Anne.
It's so true. I feel like it's one of the things that falls to the bottom of the list, caring for ourselves, and then also our staff caring for themselves, right? There's so many other things that feel like they just takes priority for sure.
Great. So we've got Patrick saying tips for maintaining work-life balance and for helping staff. Each and every tool, I love that, Tuesday, each and every tool available to support staff. Absolutely.
He doesn't want to miss one. I'm with you.
Not one. Yeah. All right.
Time management. Yeah. Engaging and motivating staff. I feel like it's tough to do that when everyone's exhausted, right?
That's right. And returning to work looks different for every organization, every team, every individual.
It's so true. And it feels like it looks different week by week right now,
right.
In terms of sort of where we are. So,
well, and that's actually a perfect segue into, I think, the conversation and the slides. So we're just going to share a couple of slides, and then we're going to we're going to put you into breakout rooms to have some of these conversations with one another, because really what we're talking about today are really specific practices. Like, we're going to start with this, what happened and what is continuing to happen during the pandemic. And then we're going to offer you some very specific practices, and then just tie that into how does staff care and leadership really, really go hand in hand. So Stacey, you want to talk about this, because this is something, we've been working together now for 5 years, and we specialize in really working with nonprofits. And, COVID really is wreaking havoc, with everyone, and really specifically in the world of nonprofits.
Yeah, I think that, of course, if you think back what now seems like a lifetime ago at the beginning of the pandemic, there was so much unknown, and there was so much concern, rightfully so, around safety and sort of just the safety of the clients that we serve, the safety of our staff, the safety of ourselves and our families. And so, some of the early research coming out of those early days indicated that when people work in organizations that seemed to be really paying attention to that and taking it very seriously, there was this sort of level of trust that got established around, like, okay, I think that you're actually concerned for my well-being. What's so difficult about this, of course, is here we are now 2 full years later, and it feels like there are still, I mean, we were talking before the session started about how many people we all know now who have had COVID, and how schools are affected, and small organizations in terms of staff numbers. You know, it doesn't take but 1 or 2 people, and then all of a sudden it can just bring an organization virtually to its knees. And so trying to really figure out how to balance that safety and sort of helping people realize that we are concerned about you, with keeping the doors open, keeping the services flowing if possible, all of that. Like, this has really been part of the challenge. And then, of course, there's also this real challenge around connection. And we actually have a whole session that we do pretty much on this topic, because we are wired for connection as human beings. And this has been a really, really challenging time for connection. And so I know my holidays, even just a couple of weeks ago, were disrupted because of COVID. And I'm sure many, many of yours may have been as well. And then, you know, overlaying all of what COVID brought, we also had just this historic sort of eye-opening moment in the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so when you're focusing on what does that mean in our organization, while we're all disconnected, while some people are at home, some people are in the office, like, it's complicated. And so trying to kind of keep our eye on that ball in terms of really centering the importance of that while all of the rest of this is going on, I think has been super challenging. At least when we talk to the leaders that we work with, it's been difficult to sort of figure out how do you prioritize all of that. And it feels like one of the messages that keeps coming back is just helping all of our staff, and actually ourselves, come back to what is it that we're all about here. I know Alicia and I run some CEO groups. And in my last group, I was just looking at the notes from our last session. We had a whole conversation about the importance of just revisiting, what is the purpose? What am I doing here? Because when there's so many things going on and it feels impossible to get to everything, sometimes the most helpful thing to do is sort of come back to center. And so I think just staff care right now is more complicated than ever for some of the reasons that we list here.
That's right. And I would just also offer, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but, you know, staff care includes yourself. And I think as CEOs, as leaders, that sometimes, you know, you, just as many of your probably directors and VPs and managers are also doing, are putting other people first. And so, you know, this is the continuation of COVID brings with it its own challenges, in the sense of the exhaustion, the ongoing uncertainty, right? And even, you know, both in the early days and even still now, confusing messages coming out of, you know, the government, the CDC, whoever it is, the state, about what are we supposed to be doing? How are we supposed to be staying safe? And I think the really important part of this is that acknowledging and validating your feelings and the feelings of your staff. And it might not seem like that big of a deal. And just being consistently showing up and saying, we see you, we hear you, we feel and know that this anxiety and fear is there, that we're all experiencing deep levels of loss and grief for so many reasons. And that we are worried, like we don't know. And it's hard to also be, you know, a leader during these times of uncertainty. And so, you know, just being able to focus on really the here and the now, it's that balance, right? As a leader, you're always looking forward as well as really being here in the moment. And so being able to support yourself as well as supporting your team in focusing on literally what do we have control over, right? Focusing on what we can do, because there is so much that feels like it's out of control, right? And we can easily, go ahead, Stace.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's a couple of things, comments in the chat asking us to speak to sort of vaccinated and unvaccinated staff and some of the challenges that come up from that. And what you just said, Alicia, I think really resonated for me in this whole question of, you know, we do not live in a place where people are necessarily mandated to get the vaccine, and people feel very strongly on both sides of that. And as a leader, of course, you know, you're running your organization, and if your organization has not made that sort of requirement part of being part of the organization, then it is absolutely possible to have these two camps. And so I think this question of what can we control becomes really important, you know? So what we can control is, what does safety look like within our four walls? And that might mean masking, it might mean distancing, it might, you know, whatever that means. And we're holding everyone to the same standard here. And so really trying to take some of the political positioning out of the conversation and coming back to, you know, what is the rule of the road for our organization? That is what we can control. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Alicia, but I felt like that was very much, because I know so many leaders are really struggling with how to navigate what all of a sudden this health crisis became this political issue. It was just very odd the way it all sort of started. And it feels like we haven't been able to fully shift out of that. So I think it is really challenging. And I think this whole question of what can you control really matters here.
And Stacy, this is Mary. I just wanted to pop in there with a quick comment, which is I wanted to mention to folks that we did run a session. It was back in August, and it was on the more sort of practical side of dealing with some of the return to office issues like vaccination, masking, distancing. And I'm going to post a link to the page that has that session recording and slides. So if that's something that would be a good reference for you, it does get at some of those issues around vaccination and returning to the office.
That's great, Mayor. Thank you for that
Yeah.
resource. That's fantastic. Well, Stacey, you know, it seems like, you know, I'll just talk through maybe just one or two more points here. It seems like this might be a really great time to go into a breakout room so that folks can talk with one another. I mean, I think that the one thing that Stacy and I see and hear over and over again from the CEOs that we work with, from all of the leaders that we're talking to, is that it really is noticing, how are we thinking about the situations, whatever the situations are. I mean, we've been talking about COVID right now because it's incredibly tied into staff care. And you know, when we get into these high levels of stress and fear and anxiety, it can be very easy, and actually our brains are hardwired to really focus on the worst case scenarios because our brain's trying to keep us safe. And so, you know, really having some mindfulness or self-awareness practices of just really noticing for yourself, or when staff get into that really future thinking, like, how can we just come back into this present moment and stay right here, right now, and, you know, focus on what we do have control over, Stace, like you were just saying. So how about, and I think Stace, you just set them up, right? The breakout rooms.
I did, yeah. So how much time are we are we able to do 10 or 11 minutes?
Let's do 10 minutes. And you know, what we're just offering is to have, just as you're in conversation with 2 or 3 other leaders, just having a moment to check in. And I think the question that we would ask you is, how have things been going for you? And, you know, if you want to add your organization in there, that's fine. But really, how have things been going for you? Because as CEOs and leaders, you don't often get a chance to talk about that, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll open the rooms. I think we have about 3 folks in each room, with maybe 4 in 1 or 2 of them. So
Perfect.
I'll open that now. And you.
So Steve just joined us while you were in your breakout rooms from the Hartford Symphony Orchestra, and he was just saying, I am just really over talking about COVID-19. I'm curious, anybody else just really over it, done with talking about it, don't want to have to deal with it? Yeah, that's what we figured. So yeah, Steve, thank you. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. So just curious, any shares or anything that anybody would like to just offer about having that time of connection with one another with just a check-in?
Any insights from your conversation, or maybe just that feeling of, oh, it's not just me?
Yeah, go ahead, Denise. Remember to unmute though. You have to unmute.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to thank Andrea and Tuesday for listening to me and supporting me as I transition into this role, because our team isn't only dealing with COVID, they're all back at the office, but they're also dealing with, a big change, knowing that a new executive director is coming on board. So when we talk about anxiety, they're anxious. So I'm working on trying to taper that down a bit, I guess. And so I very much appreciated the breakout session.
Thank you, Denise.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, go ahead, Fernanda.
Good morning. I think one thing that resonated for me is that in our breakout group, while we had very different organizations and large and small and different kinds of missions, that we're all experiencing a loss of connection with the people that we work with every day, right? That even though you see each other on camera, that, the lack of in-person connection and, missing those kind of like, informal conversations, I think is really taking a toll on a lot of leaders.
Yes.
Can I just ask a follow-up for that, not being in that breakout group, but we were just having this discussion yesterday, it would be great for us all to be in the office and interact and see each other. And then we had a few days of this, and then there was this underlying consensus of, wow, I wasn't able to get anything done being here at the office. I'm almost better off just working from home. So you have the want and the need and the desire to be able to interact with, your peers and your coworkers, but then I think it's because we're lacking that so much that, there's these side conversations and, just wanting to kind of collaborate in person, and the focus of, I guess the bigger picture of what you're able to do at home is completely taken away. So there's that, it's almost like that double sword edge there, and is anybody else experiencing that? Has anyone else had that kind of conversation?
This is Karen O'Connor. We came, first of all, in the midst of the beginning of the pandemic, when we were all, specifically in our main office, working remote, I actually had a staff member that left due to anxiety. It was combined with the work that she did with victims at court, with the overwhelming clients and increase during the initial quarantine. And I made a commitment to myself that I didn't have eyes on her. We were just talking on the phone, that I felt like I could have maybe intervened and saw that she was spiraling to a point that she had to leave the job. And when we all came back, I kind of felt like if I sat down in a coworker's office and we were chatting over coffee, even if we came up with one idea of let's try to do that, that would have been something that never would have happened when we were remote. So I feel like that being able to, saying you're not getting anything done, you really are getting things done by connecting, keeping an eye on one another, and those ideas that, those innovative ideas or projects or different ways that we can do things happen from sitting down over coffee or just communicating. That's just was my humble experience with what I felt when we returned to work back in September of last year.
I don't honestly sense a loss by not being with people in the office. And there's one other person here today. We probably won't speak because we're trying to be careful about stuff. I think that more of a concern, though, it's fine now, but as people come on to staff that we don't know, I think that's when we're going to start finding a problem, because you just don't have relationships with people. Right now, we know each other, we trust each other. I haven't found any kind of problem with work, but I think as new people come on, that's going to reveal itself.
My sense of that too is that there's some element of competency with technology with all of that, because I think that I agree. There's some staff who are out of the office, and I'm ready to tell them, you can work remotely for the rest of your life because you are available to me. You're doing your work just as effectively as you could in the office. And there's others who just haven't embraced this new method of communication. So I think it goes back to, you know, the long list of things that we as leaders need to pay attention to, which is varying levels of competency, varying levels of initiative, varying levels of ability to cope with change in the workplace. And it's really hard to balance because what might work for some people won't work for others. And then we're in the position of, okay, well, if somebody needs to be in the office, do we need to say that everybody? It's just, it's nearly impossible. At least that's the way it feels to me.
Mm.
Mm.
Is it Andrea?
Andrea, yes.
Andrea.
Good morning, everyone. So I
Morning.
agree with what everyone's saying. I agree. I wanted to add to what Katie was just saying that fortunately for our organization, we are a small group of about under 10. And so I noticed that earlier on that there were some anxiety and frustration just surrounding the topics and just the environment. And so we sat down as a group and just talked about all of the challenges that we were experiencing in different ways that I can potentially address those challenges. And what we came up with was those who feel more comfortable to work in the office, which were two people said, not everyone's fortunate to have a workspace at home. And so that also is something that we have to consider and ensure that we can support our team members with. And so those individuals wanted to continue working from the office while everyone else wanted to work virtually. And we came up with a plan on Thursday mornings. Not only do we have meetings in the afternoon time, we have it doesn't matter if you're in the office or if you're working from home, we all log on to Zoom and it's our office day where we get a time to just connect and talk. And, we're still working, but also allow us to have that office environment. And then once a month so far since November, we decided that on Fridays we wanted to just stop everything and really reconnect. And so we've been doing that, and that's been super helpful. And sometimes you think, oh, I have so much to do, and the calendar is piling up or things are piling up. But at the same time, being able to just take a few hours and reconnect and allow people to just be themselves and make this a work culture that allows everyone to be embraced and seen is just valuable. And I found it that we've gotten even closer, and work, just work has been we've been more productive, and our ideas are just moving. Yes, there's still challenges in many areas, and that's just like the environment that we're in at the moment, but as a team I feel like it's been beneficial. So I just wanted to share that's something that has worked for us, and I'm thankful for the team and how it's working out for us.
Thank you, Andrea. I think that really ties in with some of what we're going to talk about in just a minute. This has been an awesome discussion in the sense of I think that meeting people where they are and finding that balance between what's going to work from a efficiency productivity perspective, as well as what do we need to do, what do we need to do in a more intentional way to have these meaningful conversations that are just about being human beings who are working together, caring for one another, and who need contact. When we're not in physical space with one another, we still need to make that effort in some way. And yet it can be it looks different and sounds different than it has in the past, perhaps. Right, Stace?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does look and feel different than it has in the past. And I really appreciate Jacqueline's comment about equity and being fair to all team members. And I think, again, and I think Giancarlo's saying the same thing about sort of it isn't going to necessarily look the same. There was a really interesting conversation between Breanne Brown and a woman named Priya Parker on this very topic. So maybe I'll go during the next breakout and find a link to that, where she was just talking about the challenge and sort of the importance of centering around this idea of equity, even when people are working in different places and trying to sort of navigate different needs, different comfort levels, what the organization needs, just what you were saying, Alicia. So it's a complicated time. I think just even having the conversation brings the awareness forward, which is important.
Well, and so I know that we could probably stay on just this topic for some of our time here, right? And I think we want to just transition. We want to give a couple of tools. And, we're just going to do this briefly because we also want to make sure that we give more time for all of you to continue these conversations about what are you actually doing, and some ideas to perhaps exchange about future ideas. And we are going to offer a pause right now, and a pause that is for you, in the sense of, staff care really begins with encouraging both you as leaders as well as your teams to have these moments where it is literally just putting on the oxygen mask, right? You've heard that metaphor before, probably. And we like to say, asking the question, how am I being while I am doing, and checking in. And so we're just going to offer a moment right now of really just some simple breathing that can just help to connect into the present moment, just help with calming, anxiety, or just settling your, you or someone else's just nervous system. And so literally just going to guide you in a 1 minute practice. And we're recording this just so that we can have it on the, the Hartford Foundation can have it on their website. So if you feel more comfortable, you are welcome to turn off your camera for this. And I'm just going to invite you to put your feet on the floor and really feel them there. And then sit up just a little bit taller. And perhaps just sit back a little bit, feel the support of the chair, roll your shoulders a couple of times. Again, just because you're outward focused, bring your attention inward. And if you feel comfortable doing it, you are welcome to close your eyes, because sometimes just closing your eyes can give a moment of pause, of having that energy being in an outward perspective. So just pausing. And if you don't feel like closing your eyes or don't feel comfortable, just soft gaze on something. Look out a window at the sky, find a spot on your desk. And just begin to bring your attention. Imagine that your attention in your mind is like a spotlight. And I'm going to invite you to shine the spotlight of your attention on the fact that you are breathing. And the wonderful thing about the breath is that happens automatically. The other really powerful aspect about the breath is that we have some control over it when we think about it or focus on it. So I'm just going to invite you to focus on the fact that you are breathing in and that you are breathing out right now. And just allow the breath to really fill up the inside of your lungs, expand your chest, soften your ribs. And then the exhale, just really let the breath go. Just fully exhale. And you might just try following the breath, and probably what happens is your mind will get distracted because there's lots of thoughts happening, and that's okay. Imagine just seeing if your thought comes up, if you can just let it float away like it's on a cloud, and then come back and see if for the next moment you can just anchor your attention to your breath. And perhaps see if you can soften your belly a little bit and let the breath go a little bit deeper into your belly, perhaps into your low back. And so for the next 3 breaths, just see if you can perhaps even slow down your breath a little bit, perhaps to a count of 4 or a count of 6. Just breathing in, perhaps a pause, and then exhaling. Just a pause, and then just do that 2 more times. And then just noticing in this minute that we've done this, just noticing if there's been any shift or change in your breathing, in your body, in how you're feeling emotionally, or even in your mind state. And then when you're ready, just very gently, if you have your eyes closed, you can open them. If you have your eyes open, just bring your attention back into the room that you're in and back into the Zoom room. And just ring the bell so you can also use the sound to come back. And I'm just curious, again, that was a minute. It was focusing on 3 breaths, 4 breaths. I'm curious if you noticed, just what did you notice by just taking that pause of putting on your own oxygen mask, of taking just a moment for your own well-being?
It doesn't take much to reset.
Thank you, Ellen. Katie. Yeah, we all do that, right? And it is, and this is the thing, three belly breaths is all it takes to begin to calm a nervous system or a fight, flight, freeze reaction, or somebody that's feeling anxious. And so 3 belly breaths. And so we want to just offer another tool. And I had it up, Stace, where'd it go?
I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and put the link to that conversation with Priya Parker and Breanne Brown if anyone's interested in listening to it. They really do get into some very interesting conversations about sort of navigating this quote unquote return, whatever it might or might not look like. So yeah, just as a reference.
That's great. All right, here we go. So we want to offer just one other tool, and this is a tool that we have used. So this is a handout, which Monica put in the chat. So, just this first aspect of the role of staff care and effective leadership is just having these moments of checking in with yourself. How am I being while I am doing? And we also have a well-being assessment that we have used for a number of years now that came from different sources and different teachers in the world of both trauma, informed care, in holistic well-being practices. And we're not going to take the time to actually go through it, but we wanted to just give this to you as a tool to use. You can use it for yourself. You can also use it with teams. And all of these, you'll notice that on this assessment, that it's broken in, it's very holistic in its approach. It's broken into a spiritual aspect. And we always say, whatever that means for you or the person who's taking the assessment, it focuses on your mental or cognitive self-care, on your emotional well-being, on your physical body, and then also just have some ideas here about workplace, or what we would also call professional self-care. And we're going to talk more about these in just a moment. And just this idea of taking a moment, and you can either use the 0 to 3 scale, which is, if finding spiritual connection or community, if that often happens for you, you put a 3. If it rarely happens, you put a 1. And the other thing that we often say about this, or any assessment, is to see if you can do this or offer this to your team from a place of curiosity. This is not about judgment. This is not about going through all of these and saying, oh, I don't do this, this, and this. It's really about, sometimes people see patterns. Oh, I'm really taking care of my physical well-being, but I'm not focusing so much on my mental self-care. So any one of these practices is an opportunity that can be simple. It can be just a little bit of time and focus that can be very restorative in that different aspect of self-care. Stacey, anything you would add to that before we get into the more of the workplace?
Well, I would
aspects.
reinforce the idea that, this isn't about what we're not doing. Sometimes it's just even recognizing the things that we are doing and recognize how they do sort of provide some of that sort of sense of self-care. The other thing is, I think right now there's a lot of conversation happening about self-care, and there is a tendency for many of us to feel like it's one more thing to put on the very long and impossible to-do list. So one of the things, and you'll see some of the just ideas or suggestions on this tool are really just moments. Just really, we like to talk about micro moments and macro moments, and so in the micro moment, you really might be doing just 3 deep breaths or standing up and walking around the office or wherever you're working for 10 seconds or 20 seconds between meetings, whatever that might be. And then if you have more time, of course, maybe doing a yoga program on YouTube or doing a run or, whatever it is, maybe changing one thing about our eating patterns, whatever those may be. So it's just creating this idea that it's not all or nothing, that these are just small incremental things we can do throughout the day to support ourselves really do matter. And it's not about, again, trying to feel like I need to pile more on my already overwhelming list. It's just recognizing that all of the research is very clear. If we're not taking care of ourselves in meaningful ways, we are just less able to care for others. And of course, we're all in the caring for others business. So that's
right.
the conundrum.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And, again, just, the staff care practices, there are a lot of practices on that, in that well-being handout or assessment that we're going to talk about here in a minute. And I think, we want to just emphasize a few things. So Stacey, you want to talk through this?
Yeah, we've already heard some great examples. I think, Andrea, you provided a lot of examples of ways that your organization is really trying to ensure everyone has a seat at the table, whether they're in the office or at home, having those common times where folks are meeting together. So it's really just how are we emphasizing the importance of this? And I think as leaders, given the type of work that you all do, my guess is, and we work with a lot of leaders in this space, and my sense is that leaders are trying to really emphasize this and checking in with teams and checking in with staff. And so, sometimes it's really about having a conversation about what is it that we can do as a team to really emphasize the importance of caring for ourselves. And maybe it's starting each meeting or one meeting a week with gratitudes or whatever that may be. It can be super simple types of practices. So one of the challenges I know we've heard a lot about, and maybe you can very much personally relate to this, is just this whole question of work-life balance. When we're working and living in the same space, it gets really complicated. And so I know with many of the clients I've been working with, it's just trying to find ways to set boundaries where you feel like I'm not compromising on my commitment to the organization, and yet I'm also being able to prioritize my family, prioritize my off time. And as leaders, I think sometimes we set models about that we may or may not intend. And so really being able to have those open conversations about what does work-life balance look like in this new way of working, particularly for the staff that's working at home. I think that can be a really effective way to acknowledge that this can be really complicated. So, many of you have already, we are 2 years in now, many of you are already doing things, I'm sure, that are really trying to center and really prioritize staff self-care. And I don't know, maybe you have some other examples that you've implemented in your workplace that might be of interest to others. Anyone want to share any ideas or thoughts that you've put into place in terms of really reinforcing the importance of staff care, self-care?
I wouldn't mind sharing something that we're doing at Hartford Youth Scholars. And this is actually new this year, so we'll see how it goes. But one of the things that, I felt, and I think a lot of, our staff felt, is that, we continue to use this word self-care to the point where it feels like you don't get it as my, direct supervisor, right? Like, when do I have the time to self-care? And to, and obviously balancing that with like the need for filling up your cup, like you mentioned, to show in an effort to show that like we're serious about, you taking the time for yourself. Two things. One, leadership modeling the way, right? If you're not taking time away, it doesn't encourage anyone else on staff to feel like it's okay to take the time for self, right? So to say like, yo, I'm going to the gym, for lunch, I'm going to be off the grid. My phone will be off. I'm not answering emails. Again, just reinforces the fact that you're like, it's okay to take this time. So it's important to model the way. And then the second thing that we're doing at Hartford Youth Scholars is we have kind of a stipend, a small stipend, like $100 per staff member. We're a small staff, so but as kind of a reimbursement of sorts for staff members that want to take a mental health day, right? So, if that is like going to the spa, for a day, and, obviously within reason, we reimburse, up to, $100. If you want to take, 2 different days and lose $50, on each time, as a way for us to say, hey, like, you need to go, you need to fill your cup. You want to take a boxing class, just like get all of that anger, emotion, or whatever you're feeling out. Like, here, like, this is something that, we're supporting as leadership, and like, we're investing in not only in time, but in the resource for you to go and do some of the things that you need to do to, again, just fill your cup.
Thank you, Anthony. What a great support and a great modeling that you're offering. Yeah, any other practices or anything that folks have put in place for staff care? Please, Marilyn.
So not as simple, but we have, because we're a 24-hour facility, so obviously we can have certain people work from home. And I think that's the, whether you call it fair, unfair, equity, you really struggle with, because some people can work at home. So we've done something. And again, I went to my board early on and I said, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to pay for this, but this is what we have to do. And we instated crisis pay. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, the first year, now we're saying the second year, we started that, and it was bi-hourly, if you were 40 hours or 20 or below. And then we would wane off, and then we would, at one point we had to go back, and now we're back again. But I think it was really important to say to folks, we value you, and the one way that we can do it, because we know you have to come in, is that we will pay you more. And I think, I know that people appreciated that, and it has been difficult. And certainly the first year we had some extra funding, and we're trying to figure it out. But it was sort of along the lines of what Anthony said, except that they have to be here, but there's some extra money associated with the incredible work they're doing on the front lines. So that's what we've done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Thanks, Marilyn. I know a number of other folks on this call have done similar things, incentivizing and supporting.
Yeah.
Erin, I love what you're writing. A simple self-care is just allowing staff to turn off the camera sometimes. Yes. Yeah, great. Anything else? Great. Well,
So-
Stace, how about, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ann.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
from the outset of the pandemic, my biggest challenge was how to keep our offsite team and our in-office team, how do we keep them together? Biggest challenge that we faced at the outset was that I was in the middle of interviewing. I had to hire people that we did not actually meet for months. And so bringing the two groups together was a particular challenge. And what we did was we instituted at the beginning daily team meetings, like first thing in the morning. And I would schedule those meetings for, let's say, 9 o'clock, but we would start them at 8:50. And I would let the team know that 10 minutes was their opportunity. I wouldn't be on the call. so that they could just feel, free to share whatever it is that they wanted to. Well, we've actually continued those meetings. They're now once a week. We start them at 8:50. That's their 10 minutes to talk about whatever it is that they want. But we've kept those meetings fairly loosely organized because we found that there was great value in allowing the team members to talk amongst themselves and share what they were experiencing, and not use that time primarily to speak at them, but to listen to them and allow them to support each other. And so we do share, like, here are some of the tasks and here are some of the deliverables, but they drive that conversation. And they have been indicated that they find it helpful.
That's so powerful, Anne.
That's
Thank
so
you.
great. Yeah.
Yes,
Judy, yes.
Just to echo what Anne is saying, we also have had daily staff meetings that start out with personal check-ins. I am there, it's everybody, and each of us shares something that's happening, and there's a time to respond and converse about that. And then we dive into work. And I think it's been a wonderful place to sort of see where we're going as a group activity. And there's a lot of collaborative thought that happens afterwards in terms of what daily tasks are, but also the larger picture of where we're going. So we don't meet on Fridays, but Monday through Thursday we have, and we've done that since the pandemic started. And I think it has allowed there to be a sense of team in a more personal way as well as in a work way. So just something.
You know,
Thank
Judy,
you,
it
Judy.
just makes me think, I don't remember if we have it on the slide or not, just this whole opportunity to reflect. You know, we have been doing this for a long time now, and we put a lot of new processes in place, whether that's when we meet, how we meet, the purpose that we meet, you know. And so I think there is an opportunity to just take stock and to say, well, what did we stop doing that we're not really missing, you know, or what did we start doing and it really makes a difference, or, you know. So it's just, I think we don't always get this, certainly this level of change all at the one go is unprecedented. And while it's overwhelming and we can talk about the challenges, some of the opportunity is it does give us an opportunity to look with some new eyes at sort of what's working and what's not. And I know many leaders are really trying to kind of capitalize a little bit on that with their teams to say, well, what's working and what's not. That sort of leads us into this whole future idea, right, Alicia?
Well, and that's exactly why I just brought this up, because you just spoke to a couple of points that are on here, you know, just really considering, you know, we have been in this for a while. And so it's not necessarily about doing something new. I think what Stacy and I are hearing a lot of, both from leaders like yourselves, as well as people like Breanne Brown, Esther Perel, is that it is very much right now about intentionality, about being intentional, about having these connected kinds of conversations where we're asking questions that, you know, might be a little bit different, more, you know, open-ended about how are you doing, or, you know, even just considering, like Stacy said, you know, looking at how have we been resilient through this, right? Like even just considering, you know, whether it's the opportunity that we're facing or what have we done to get through this so far, and celebrating that. Like even just talking about what are some successes that we've had, you know, what are some ways that we, the small things, right? Whether it's a small success of something that you did for yourself, that the team did together, a client success. Again, just because the mind and just the way that the world is right now, there's a lot of focus on the negativity, what's not working, the challenge, and that is all true. And it can be a both and, when we're also looking at, well, we've gotten this far, like that's amazing. hooray for us, we have been incredibly resilient. And so what might that mean for the future? And so whatever that looks like, whether it's, I love the, whether it's the weekly, whether it's the daily, whether it's, having these moments of intentional time where we're coming together and we're both talking perhaps about work needs, but also about, mind and heart needs, like just remembering, like, why are we doing the work that we're doing? Like, it really matters. And staff appreciation really matters. And I know that you all know this, and appreciation, monetary is fabulous. You don't always have that option. So, I think very authentic and real kinds of staff appreciation in gesture, in words, really goes a long way. And I think, Stace, just anything you want to add before we go into another
No,
breakout
let's
group?
get into the room so everyone has some time to chat with each other. So, what do we think? Maybe 12, 13 minutes?
Yeah, I think that would be good. And then we can have wrap up time. So this is really just sharing ideas, whether it was something from, maybe if you glanced at the well-being assessment, or just hearing one another, just really considering, if there was one small action that you might incorporate into for yourself or with your team. And again, just considering a small action, one habit,
Yeah.
one little thing, right? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to open.
We always say it's fabulous to see people come back with smiles.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's a good indication that it was a good breakout session. So we're curious. We'd love to finish up. We have just 5 or so minutes here, 6 minutes. What were any thoughts that came out of your breakout rooms about staff care and or self-care that might be takeaways from today? And maybe a takeaway was just, it was great to have connection with each other in the room, but that's fine too. How about a few thoughts, some takeaways, something that was valuable, insightful, inspiring?
In our group, someone shared that they're keeping their meetings to 45 minutes so that they have those extra 15 minutes to regroup and take care of oneself. Because this tendency on Zoom to just roll and roll and roll into the next and the next and the next doesn't really give anyone a chance to pause or breathe or eat or go to the bathroom.
Right.
So just taking care of the very basic needs.
That's so fantastic,
awesome.
Ellen.
Like a huge win.
Thank you for saying that. I meant to actually mention that, like 50-minute meetings, because we've heard a number of organizations doing
Yes.
that, and it makes such a difference. So thank you for sharing that.
And no meeting Fridays or minimal meeting Fridays. I think we've heard some organizations trying that as well. That's great.
Yeah, what other thoughts? What was a takeaway for you today?
We talked, I mean, first of all, it was good to connect with folks, which was really nice. But I also mentioned a couple of things that we're doing, like non-cash ways to show appreciation for staff. We've gotten into the habit of doing shout outs in our internal newsletter. So, any staff person can shout out somebody else for doing great things. And, people have really appreciated that. We're doing agency-wide Zoom town hall meetings every quarter, where we highlight some client success stories or something about a particular program, and we get folks to highlight some of the great work that they're doing, and that seems to really be well received by members of the staff.
Thank you, Fernando, for sharing that. Great.
So I'll jump in here. Sarah, I hope you don't mind me sharing for you, but Sarah shared an exercise she did with her staff where, and it works on Zoom, you kind of establish a circle and everyone goes around the circle and says what they admire. Just they name one thing they admire about the coworker to their right. And I really like that. I thought that was a really nice way to open a meeting and just establish a really supportive atmosphere.
Mm.
That's fantastic.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. There's something so powerful about appreciation. I think it's just easy to underestimate how much it matters. So it's a great tip.
Fantastic. Any others?
Well, do you see that
Yes.
Andrea says, or I guess Becky was reporting from her group that the idea was to stop, assess, and evaluate. Like, I think that's such great guidance, because we do get into kind of the habit of the fire drill sometimes. I think once our nervous systems are escalated because of all that's going on, we're in that state. And so everything can kind of feel like that. So just to be able to take a breath, slow down, really assess how much of a crisis is this actually, and what, is the next right thing that I need to do here. It's just a very different way to approach a challenging moment. And I think it's a great reminder for all of us. So thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Andrea. I really needed to hear that in our small group. So I really appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Andrea.
Great. Well, we got a couple of minutes. So I just want to say from Stacy and I, thank you all so much for being here today and for taking the time, for being so, honest and open and sharing with one another,
Engaged.
transparent. And we just so appreciate all of you and all of the work that you are doing in the world, and how much you're supporting yourselves and your staff. And Stace, anything else you want to add before we hand it back to Mayor?
No, I just, I think we really do recognize the uniquely challenging position that many of you have. And again, just really respect and appreciate the contribution you're making to the communities where you're working. And we hope that you are able to take a little time to reflect for yourself, as well as really thinking on behalf of your staff. So thank you so much. It was great to be with all of you today.
Yep. And just to echo Alicia and Stacy, thanks for taking the time to be here. In a way, I think just taking this time was a little bit of an act of self-care in itself. I think you shared some great ideas and resources. We'll send out an email with some of those resources that people posted in the chat so that you can refer to them when you have time. And as always, if you could just take a moment, fill out the survey, let us know both what you thought about this session, but what else would be helpful? What other types of convenings would be useful to you, given the jobs that you're all doing, the difficult jobs that you're doing, because we want to keep offering things that are valuable to you. And I will say it was nice seeing a bunch of people I haven't seen in a while. So stay safe, stay healthy, and stay in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take good care. Bye-bye.